All right, so today what we're going to do, we're going to go through and do a couple of things. We're going to start with just a framework for goal setting. We're going to talk about doing some of how to really lay that out. I'm going to give you some action steps on this, give you a formula of how to set this up for yourself. We're really just going to talk about the business side of goal setting today. I mean, obviously there's other layers, and if y'all want me to, I'll be glad to do that with you, because in reality, in my opinion, you ought to have goals in all areas. I mean, if you've only got one area working, the other areas are going to suffer. And if my relationships at home are not working well, it's hard to expect my relationships at work to work well. So we probably need a little broader, but just for time's sake on this, we're going to just kind of hit a couple things. Are y'all familiar with the Mark McCormack wrote a book called What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, and they did a study in 1979 about goals. Have y'all heard about that at all?
Are you talking about the same one?
What's that?
Did you just say Mike McCormick?
No, Mark McCormack is who wrote this. So what it did is they took, and they can really measure, they wanted to measure the value of goals. And so they did this study with MBA students that were graduating in 1979 at Harvard Business School, quote unquote, the best of the best going into business. And what they did is they asked them, do you have a written specific set of goals for your business life after you leave Harvard? 3% said yes, they do. So if you don't have written goals, it's no big deal. I mean, most people don't. But the 3% said yes, I have a very clear path. I've written it down. I've got a plan of action, and this is what my plans are. 13% said, I don't really have it written down, but I kind of have an idea of what I want. I've got in my mind what I want to achieve. And then clear 84% said, not really, just hoping to get a good job, live a good life. Just go with the flow, which is what, that's probably pretty normal, to see that, if not even skewed a little less than average on everything else. Morning. So what they did though is they came back 10 years later, 1989, and they polled all of those people. The best way they could do that was by going in there and figuring out what was their income level. That's the easiest way, numbers-wise, to check and see what had happened. What they found is that the 13% that had just a general idea of goals and what they wanted, they compared them to the 84% that had no plans whatsoever, just kind of going with the flow, and their income on average was double of the 84%, just because they had a general idea. What was even more impressive is that the 3% that had clear, written, concise goals, 10 years clear of Harvard Business School with MBAs from Harvard, on average, that 84% plus that 13%, 97% of the people that either had no goals or had just a general idea, the 3% averaged, on average, 10 times the income of those other 97%. So the idea is, have I talked to y'all about the reticular activating system? Have I mentioned that? All right, so I'm about to drop some knowledge. Look at that, Walton County education. So reticular activating system is basically, it's in the back of our brain, and it is the filter. It is the filter between what is conscious in our mind and what is unconscious. So, as you know, we've constantly got things going on in our mind. Unconsciously, I realize there's a wall behind me and nobody's going to attack me from behind. I don't consciously think about that all the time, Or unconsciously, I may see 50 ads and I may not even realize it. Or I may literally get in my car and drive somewhere, and when I get there, I'm like, was I even in the car? I almost unconsciously did certain things, and it filtered. I didn't have to think, oh my gosh, that car's coming at me. Make sure you're 3 feet off the yellow line in the middle, right? We do a lot of things. So what the reticular activating system does is it activates us to notice things, to make things conscious. It actually puts in motion those things that we say are important to show it to us. And so what happens when you write something down is there's something that happens psychologically that cues your RAV, reticular activating system, to make that a priority. It begins to notice certain things and open your eyes to certain things. I think I've talked to y'all about, when my wife got her new vehicle, I never seen a vehicle like this. She got this Honda Pilot, this silver Honda Pilot. And I'm driving down the road, and I see the next day after she gets it, I see her coming, and so I start waving. It's not her, and I'm like, what in the world, And so I go, there's another one, and it's not her again. I'm like, did everybody get silver Honda Pilots yesterday when my wife did? No, it'd been there the whole time. But the problem was I wasn't, in my conscious mind, I wasn't noticing those things. Right. So it's the same concept here, is by writing things down, really having a plan of action, what happens is, you ever have those feelings where you're like, man, it seems like the world's just either making things worse or better, because everything just seems to be working in a direction. Odds are everything's been there the whole time. It's just you haven't been consciously focused on those things. So what we want to do today is we want to just really talk about writing some goals down, especially as we're wrapping up this year, heading into next year. Another thing, just a general idea of how this works to hopefully just drive this home is one of my best friends is in the 7th Special Forces group over at Eglin. This guy is amazing. I mean, he is he's a 7-tour veteran, Special Forces team leader. And what you don't realize is, because I've gotten to spend some time with these guys, is these guys are extremely intelligent. I mean, he is...
May I ask his name?
Eric. Yeah, Eric Rasmussen. Yeah. And so...
I sold so many houses to them.
Yeah, I know. So he is basically now at a place where he speaks multiple languages. Those guys are really smart. He has probably literally shot, he's been in combat 7 tours. And, I mean, these aren't the guys that are just, doing the supply line. You know what I mean? These are the guys kicking doors in. And so he's shot millions of rounds with weapons and with everything. But I'll promise you, I believe with all my heart that I can, if we went out to a target range right now, that I can outshoot him. As long as you let me blindfold him, spin him around where he doesn't know where the target is.
I was going to say.
And I take the shots. So the reason I say that, it's kind of crazy and we laugh about it, but in reality, are we doing that in our business? Do we have a target, or do we even know where direction we're going in? Because if we don't have a target, you don't know whether you're doing good or bad. You don't have a direction. It's just, you have to have something that you're focused on where you're moving in a direction. And that way you can make adjustments if you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm a little behind or maybe I'm a little ahead. And there's really kind of a format for doing goals. And I just want to give you this. It's a SMART goals. SMART. It's like a, what do they call that when you have the first letters? Anagram? Anagram? Acronym?
Acronym.
Okay, I'll take it. Whatever it is. Yeah. So the first S is simple. It has to be simple. Sometimes we can have these huge plans.
Yeah.
And we get to a place where we just won't even take action because we're just overwhelmed by it. So the first is S. It has to be simple. The M is measurable. You have to be able to measure it. You have to be able to see, am I working towards this, like we were talking about? Am I working towards this target or am I not? A is attainable. You have to be able to believe that it is attainable. For me to say my goal is to dunk a basketball would be naive. I can go jump all the boxes I want. Odds are I'm not going to be able to dunk a basketball. I got to have something that gets. Unless you drop it down to 8 feet, then I'm going to tear that thing down. But you've got to have it where it's attainable. Make sure it's something that you believe. It's going to push you. It's going to make you uncomfortable, but it's attainable. And if you're not sure if you can do it, is there somebody around you that has done it? That way you can begin to believe and see that it's attainable. R is relevant. And what I mean by relevant is this really in line with who you are? If my goal in life, if one of my main goals is to spend more time with my son, who's 11 now, and I say I want to make $5 million this year, it's probably, you could go make more money, but is it in line with all the goals in your life? Is it relevant to everything? So you want to make sure that it's in line with who you are. Is your goal something that it just lines up with, I'm this type of person and I'm going to do these things. And this is how we're going to walk side by side. So make sure it's relevant. And then T is time-based. Does it have a time frame in which it has to be achieved? Let me give you a perfect goal. And this would kind of give you a rough idea of what a perfect goal would look like. It would be something along the lines of, I want to lose 2 pounds. Yeah, come on in, Jess. Yeah, I want to lose 2 pounds in the next week. And the reason why I say that's one of the perfect goals is it's something that is simple. I can see that. It's measurable. It's attainable, it's really relevant because it's going to help my health, it's going to give me more energy, and it has a time frame in which to achieve it. So when you're business, we need to have certain time frames. And what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of go from these goals to backing it down to a daily activity list, okay? I know I've done this with some of y'all individually, but what I want to do is really stress this as we're now heading into the end of the year. And I know we're all busy, which is great, but I want to get a place where we have some goals laid out, where when we get to the end of the year, we're not just kind of starting in the blocks and trying to get up to speed, where we're just running through the end of the year and we're moving into next year. So let's talk about this. What I want you to do first thing is I want you to think about, and we're going to do this based on next year, okay? So what is it that you want to have income-wise in 2019? So whatever that number is, write that number down. It doesn't, Don't overthink it. What's the first number that came to mind? Okay. Is it simple? Is it attainable? Is it relevant to who you are? And we got a time base on this because we're going to talk about next year. Okay. All right. Now let's take and let's say, what's your average sales price? This doesn't have to be exact. Whatever it is, if it's 400,000, if it's 800,000, if it's $1,200,000, whatever it is for you, what's your average sales price? Don't overthink that either. Just think about averages. Okay.
Mine just keep growing.
That's great. We want to set it where it is, and we want to be able to outperform that, okay? And there's parts of that we'll talk about. Once you know that, take that average sales price and multiply it times 2.5%. Unless your average commission is 3%, whatever it is, because if your your sales price, average sales price is lower, you may have a higher, you may have something lower. 2.5% is what I like to use, okay? So just to make the numbers easy, if your average sales price is 400,000 times 2.5%, you'll have $10,000, okay? I'm going to use that as my basis just to kind of get this. Now take that gross commission, that number we just got, and multiply it or subtract out the Berkshire Hathaway royalty, okay? What we're doing is we're boiling down to your average commission check, okay? All right? And you just take just multiply that, whatever it is, okay? So, all right, and then what we're going to do is once we have that net number after the royalty fee, now we're going to multiply it times your commission rate, your split, okay?
I think I did something wrong.
All right.
Times 2.5.
Times the average sales price. Morning. So take your average sales price times 2.5%. That's going to get you a gross commission number. All right. Once you have that, multiply that times the franchise fee,
Oh, I know what I'm doing.
and then multiply that by your split. That's your average take-home commission. Okay, that's your average net commission. Now, whatever that number is, divide it into your annual income that you just wrote down. What we're doing is we're figuring out now how many transactions you need. Okay. All right. So now you should have a number for number of transactions. Now divide that number by 12 months. Let's go get us a monthly goal. Okay. All right, now let's take this number. I'm just going to use an easy number to make it easy for me. Let's say that your number is 2 transactions per month. I'm just going to use that as an easy number, okay? If you've got 24 transactions a year, 2 transactions a month, we know that industry averages are that 50 conversations equals 1 transaction. What I mean by conversation is that could be, just checking in on past clients. Could be very minimal talking about it. It could be talking to somebody about a particular listing. It could be a follow-up on an internet lead. It could be anything that you want it to be. An open house, someone that walks in an open house. Whatever that is, that's a conversation, okay? That's a real estate conversation. It's not just, me checking on Justin being like, hey man, what you got planned this weekend? It's actually talking about something at some point. It doesn't have to be leading with that, but some point the question or the comment about real estate comes up. So now you know how many conversations you need on a monthly basis. If we're talking 50 conversations, 2 transactions, we need 100 conversations. Now let's divide that by 4 weeks. So if we do that, now we know that 4 weeks into 100 conversations a month to get 2 transactions mean we need 25 conversations a week. Which means if you're only going to work 5 days a week, and who of us works 5 days a week? I mean, nobody does, right? But let's just use 5 days a week. That means you only need to have 5 conversations per week, 5 conversations per day to get the 25 a week, to get the 100 a month, to get 2 transactions. But how many times do we go through days where we're just putting out fires and we don't have any conversations? The beauty of this is if you have your daily to-do list, which is a goal, to have these 5 conversations, and you have that as the top of the list, and you line through those as the day goes on, and you do that every day consistently, it's not a matter of if, it's when will those numbers start working in your favor, okay? So it's a very easy way to do these things, to break these numbers down, to get to ultimately the conversations. Some of you are going to do way better than 50 conversations. I know, Justin is going to do probably more of a 35, 40 right now. Conversations, he's going to get a sale's probably going to come out of that. That's just because he's had so many over the years. You know what I mean? He knows the critical things to notice. I mean, it's just everybody's got a different number. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what your number is. If it takes you 100, if Justin only makes 20 calls a month and I make 100, I'm gonna probably outperform him. So don't get caught up on, oh, this person's better than me. You know, it's so easy to look and be like, well, that's so easy for them, you know, or they just do that and that's so easy for them. In reality, y'all know me well enough to know. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I always I almost felt like I needed to have a chip on my shoulder, you know what I mean, kind of thing. I was like, well, I may not be the smartest one in here, but they won't outwork me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I put myself in a corner sometimes and do that. So don't feel like, hey, they've just got it easier. In reality, even if they got it easy, they got to do the work, because hard work outperforms talent every time if talent doesn't work. And so every one of us has got that option. And what I want to do, I want to just kind of, this gives you a format. I'd love to sit down if you want me to with each of y'all, if you want me to individually, and just kind of lay out. Because now that we know how many conversations, we can go a little deeper. Now we're going to say, well, how are we going to generate those? Are we going to have it from open houses? We're going to have it from internet leads. We're going to have it from follow-ups on mailers. Are we going to have it where we're, calling past clients? You can only, you need to figure out what it is for you, because somebody that's been doing this a long time can do it with just people that were past clients. Yes.
I wanted to say something. Lately, I've noticed people trying to sell me on these automated leads.
Mm-hmm.
Where you get the person that helps you follow up. Even Zillow's doing
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because you, like what you're talking about, you've got to generate these conversations and have them yourself to nurture them.
And to add the value.
Right.
And to show your expertise.
Yeah, this automated stuff is
You mean like that concierge service?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that's bad.
Well, I mean, it's one of these
Good
things
and
where,
bad, I guess.
yeah, I mean, if you're not gonna make if you're not gonna make the calls, you probably ought to do that.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about the person that will make the calls or hire the calls out, who's going to get the best results?
Right.
Every single time, it's going to be you.
Right.
Because there's you're going to have that when they call and they say, well, how's it going in your area? And that person in Dallas or in Singapore
Right.
has no idea.
Right.
It's over. Whereas if they ask you and you say, oh, what's amazing is since the storm we've seen this, all of a sudden now you've got that credibility.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's not optimal. You know what I mean? What's gotten crazy on this business, and in reality, for those of us that are workers, it's actually helping, because the business now can be bought to a certain extent. You can buy leads. You can buy somebody to follow up with your leads. In reality, you can hire a buyer's agent to go show it for you. I mean, literally. You could do all of this business by hiring it out. But the bottom line is I mean, was it Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out is when you find out who's swimming naked? Y'all, sooner or later, I'm just telling you, it's not a matter of if the tide's going to go out, it's when. We're 7 years into this upswing. Almost 8 years into this upswing, depending on the market you're in. So with that in mind, this is the time really where workers can gain market share like never before. I mean, in reality, when everybody's fat and happy, which most agents are in this market, when people are fat and happy, the workers take more ground because it's easier to till that ground. So I would just encourage you, when you take these and you do these things, it really is a situation where you're going to start to see results. Don't make 100 calls though and be like, that didn't work. The numbers will work. I mean, you can't do something. You got to let the numbers work. So you've got to get a good enough scale of this to where you can see that yes, there are some patterns forming here. I get the calls all the time, about, wow, I got these internet leads and this just doesn't, I can't seem to get anybody. I said, well, how many you got? 26 of them. The averages are 1% to 2% industry-wise. We're going to outperform that with the programs and the situations and all the follow-up we've got. But man, come on. I mean, get 1,000 and then talk to me. Make 1,000 calls, and I'll guarantee you the numbers start working in your favor. So just be there. I want to give y'all just kind of a couple things just to close this, and this is really execution-wise, because we can have all the plans we want, but how do we execute those things? And so what I want to do is I want to give you what I call the 4 Ds of top producers. Okay, and this is basically the decisions that are made and the actions that are taken. So the first is you got to make a decisive decision. You've got to make sure that the goal you're setting has a why behind it. It's not just something you're just writing because I mentioned that you ought to have goals. Or you think, well, everybody else has goals, I need to have some goals. It needs to really be something that if I do this, I'm doing this because it will result in this. If I do this, my $2 can keep going to college. If I do this, I can take my son to Disney World. If I do this, I don't get those calls from the bill collectors. Whatever it is for you, you know what I mean? If I do this, we're going to take that cruise that I've always wanted to take my family on. Or if we do this, I'm going to have the ability for my wife and I to go away for every quarter for a weekend somewhere. Whatever it is, there has to be a why. Because when the why is bigger, because it's going to get tough. There's going to be points where you'll be like, this isn't worth it. And it's so easy to quit. And that's when most people quit. You have to have something that's bigger than just the goal that you're working on. So make a decisive decision on what that goal is. And then design a plan. We've done this. I've done this with y'all individually some. I'll be glad to do it anytime, especially once you get a clear vision on where it is. I'll tell you what I found is provision always follows vision. If you've got a clear vision on what it is that you want to achieve or the direction you're heading, man, all of a sudden, just provision just starts showing up. You start finding ways to make it happen. So make that decisive decision, then design a plan. Design a plan on a daily, like we were just talking about, daily actions. Not something that, this month I want to talk to 100 people. Well, that can get overwhelming. But when you say, I got to just talk to 5 people today. And then at the end of the day, I got my 5. Today was really good. I got 7. Or tomorrow, man, I only got 3 today because I was putting out fires, but I'm gonna get 7 tomorrow. Once you've got a plan of action, now you can do that. So design your plan. And then don't get distracted. So easy, when you start getting some results to get distracted and fall away from the plan. Don't get distracted. Continuously just follow that step-by-step basis. And then after you've done this for 3 to 6 months, once you start seeing some patterns, double down on whatever's working. Okay? What can happen is we can set a plan at the first of the year, and my plan may be to generate my leads. I'm going to do it with open houses, direct mail, internet leads, follow-up past clients, and whatever. Whatever my 5 things are, I'm going to generate business with. Evaluate it every quarter. Go in there and say, where did my productivity come from this time? And what will happen a lot of times is because it's easier for me to do a direct mail piece, or it's more comfortable for me to send out a video and email, I may do a lot more of that, but then I look and I say, well, gosh, those phone calls I made to past clients, that generated 80% of my business, but I'm only doing it 20% of the time. Cut out some things and double down on the thing that's working. And that's how you'll start just catching that momentum, and that's how you'll start getting those things. So make a decisive decision. Design a plan of action. Don't get distracted, and then double down on what's working. Those are the kind of things. Once we get to a place where you know what your daily deal is, that, man, no matter what happens today, as long as I make 5 calls today and I have 5 conversations, solid conversations, it's all good. I'm going to get there as long as I continue to do those things.